I am excited today to share about one of our aligned sponsors, Dr. Tung's innovative natural oral care designed with cleaner ingredients and real results. From smart floss to tongue cleaners and wellness-focused essentials, Dr. Tung's helps support healthier smiles for the whole family. Visit drtungs.com and enjoy 15% off your first purchase. Welcome, Pod Pal. I am excited to share this episode today with an old friend of mine, Dr. Karen Kirkness. She's someone that I've known since before she was a doctor, so we're both having a bit of a chuckle. We've known each other for decades through the yoga community, but she has gone on to get this PhD in medical sciences, and her work bridges fascia research, movement education, and practical lifestyle. That's what I love about her work and why I really wanted to share her with you. But I have a lot of questions about all the information that women especially are receiving right now about kind of exercise, especially with menopause. Are we supposed to be lifting heavy? How often should we recover? What should recovery look like? Does this all change as we age? Like, how do we maintain the moisture in the fascial matrix and the joints? How do we maintain mobility as we age? I think that's what a lot of us are looking for. And so Karen's going to break down the science on this for sure. She is most recently an expert in a molecule called hyaluron, which you've heard of hyaluronic acid, right? So we're going to start there, dorking out a bit about the fascia and the hyaluronic acid and kind of how that works, why I think both of these things have become household words. But then we're going to really get into the specifics of movement, exercise, and maintaining the health in the way that you want to. And Karen's going to break down for us basically four things that are super important. One of them is variety of movement exercise, full range of movement. And she's going to talk very specifically in ways I think you'll find new and interesting about how to, without having to add anything extra into your days, finding variety and full range movement on a regular basis. She also has change the way that I'm thinking about my recovery days. She's definitely a fan of high intensity exercise. I'm going to tell you that right now. But the recovery days, active recovery she's going to tell you exactly why that matters and how to do that. It's absolutely changed the way I'm thinking about things. I'll tell you that. And finally, attention to circulation and lymphatic flow, because when we do high intensity exercise, we actually break down certain molecules in the body that become inflammatory if we don't get rid of them. So you're going to love this episode, and I think it's going to give you some real actionable items for just your daily life and how to feel like you're maintaining a happy, mobile matrix in your body, thanks to the work of Dr. Karen Kirkness. Right after this. Welcome to Everyday Ayurveda with Kate, a podcast that translates ancient wisdom for modern lives. I'm your host, Kate O'Donnell. I've been living and teaching Ayurveda, India's traditional medicine, for over 25 years, and I've authored 4 best-selling books on bringing Ayurveda practices into our lives. If you're tired of battling digestive issues, hormonal imbalances, menopause symptoms, or are seeking a deeper spiritual connection and purpose, you're in the right place. This podcast is for you, offering practical, accessible advice to help you heal through diet, optimize your daily routines, and enhance your overall well-being. Follow this space for insights on a diet that heals, strategies for better digestion, sleep, hormone health, and direction for finding a deep sense of meaning and purpose. Join me, my pod people, for this empowering journey into self-care and self-discovery. Together, we'll explore how to bring balance and vitality into your everyday life. Let's do this. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Karen Kirkness. Great to have you today.
Well, it's just my pleasure to be here, my lovely Kate.
So this will be a fun conversation, I think, for listeners, because you and I have known each other for decades. I've known you since before you were a doctor. We were kind of friends through the yoga world. And then I've watched you take this deep interest in anatomy and do kind of the deepest of deep dives. and become a doctor in anatomy. And you've mentioned specifically embryology. And I do think of you as like the fascia person in my life. Like your first book, you're talking about fascia. I think it's top of mind for a lot of folks right now, like what is fascia? Like what are these new ideas that are kind of circulating because of that New York Times article? So that was ultimately what was like, oh, it's time to have Karen on. Because, of course, I've wanted to talk with you forever on this podcast, especially about, movement and kind of all the ladies are getting all this input right now about do this, do that, like lift heavy, drop your cardio, eat this, eat that. So I want to hear from you sort of like the science perspective. And I know that you live this. That's what I love about you is you're not just a scientist, you're also a practitioner. So anything that you're experiencing in your body is like being filtered through what you're sharing. That to me makes this like especially potent for folks. So maybe just if you want to, in a nutshell, I'll keep saying that, which is kind of hilarious because your work, the breadth of your work is insane. But in a nutshell, like what does embryology have to do with fascia? Right? And what's the sort of basis of your interest in fascia these days?
Well, let's get straight into it. I love being here with you, Kate. Just the idea of holding a lineage, something like Ayurveda and the science of life, and that anatomy and embryology is coming at that from just a different angle. But it's the same set of questions, and it's the same commitment to like personal experience being this hugely important lens. And that's the phenomenology of it, like that our personal experience is the most important, really, how we experience the science and make it real in our daily lives. Because you're right, there is no doubt, all the ladies, we are just being bossed around and told all the time what we should be doing. And I'm not here to science explain all of it. I'm here to share, like, from that lived experience perspective, my work over the last few years, coming up for a decade or so since I did my master's degree as a clinical anatomist in human anatomy, and then specialized in medical sciences in my doctoral work. And I've come to embryology because of this sort of uber tissue. Everyone gets started somewhere. And we are, as Jaap van der Wal, as he describes it, unicellular beings when we start out. It's just this one uber tissue. And from this uber tissue, it gives rise this strata of tissue that is on the spectrum of fluidic to, we could call it very dense tissue, such as bone. So the fascia is this, it used to be considered an inert packing material, that all the important stuff was kind of ensconced and wrapped in this sort of saran wrap or cling film, if you like, that wraps it all, double bags it, situates the organs in the cavities, and organizes the muscles along tendinous lines and insertions into the bones, and then encapsulates the joints, giving rise to joint capsules and the synovium, and the way that all that locomotor architecture is linked together. So whereas before we may have a lexicon of parts, all of these different named fascias, for example, the one that everyone knows, the iliotibial band or tensor fascia lata, the IT band, basically, or mesenteries, right? We've all, heard of the popular bits of fascia. But recently, in the last sort of 10 years, it's become clear that fascia is not just the structure in the sense of it being like a bunch of parts or nouns, but it is actually a verb. It's doing things. And chief of these interesting things that it's doing, it's actually a signaling medium, which is bonkers. It's just wild to think that, fascia, what is it? Is it ligaments, tendons? How is it sending messages? And it does so in a variety of ways. One of the ways that I've explored in my book, and authors like Mei-Wan Ho talk about the piezoelectric quality of the collagen, like fiber optic cables that are sensitive, to compression, to traction, stretch forces, all of these forces that will continue and propagate along the lines of collagen. But I'm actually not going to talk today about collagen because that's so richly covered elsewhere. And as you mentioned, everybody's all talking about fascia now. And, as soon as you start thinking about fascia, all of your algorithm is now going to blow up with the beautiful AI generated reels of quantum matrix fascia, and it's all going to rain down on you now. But what we are going to talk about today is hyaluronan. And I wonder,
Mm.
if you do you feel like your audience will be interested in hyaluronan? Is this something you're thinking about, hyaluronan?
I mean, I've heard of hyaluronic acid in the skincare. So this word that you're saying, I'm thinking, okay, they must be related. So we all can get a little ding ding because we've heard something like this word before, but really have no idea what it is or why it's important.
Yeah, get the ding ding on you. Yes, you heard it before. So it's nice to recognize the term. So you'll see it used interchangeably with hyaluronic acid because this compound was very popularized in the cosmetics industrial complex where all of the funding goes to, pharmaceuticals or cosmetics. And then we have to torture a lot of rabbits and mice, unfortunately, to figure out how our products will behave in the marketplace on humans, sadly. But with hyaluronic acid, it's been shown to be a signaling medium depending on its molecular weight. And in cosmetics, it's explored at high molecular weight or low molecular weight. And lots of money went into the research on exploring its applications for the skin, not just topically, but also as injectable because
Mm.
hyaluronic acid, right? It's a polysaccharide, this polymer, really long, sinewy chains of, if you can imagine, really long pearl necklaces with a repeating disaccharide, two sugar organization. So these pearl necklaces, really long. And their geometric domain as molecules will hold and gather up to 1,000 times its molecular weight in water.
Oh, so
So
they
it
like
doesn't,
absorb water.
we can think about it that way. And we're not going to
Yeah.
go deep into the chemistry of it because we'll really get in the weeds with the
Yeah.
verbiage
Yeah.
because it's actually a fallacy. It doesn't bind to all that water. But if you can imagine like a play park structure with 1,000 kids in and around it, not all the kids are hanging from the monkey bars, but they're all kind of gathered in and amongst the play structure. If there are any moms listening, I know you've seen this before. They're all in there. They're not all attached to the bars. And hyaluronan is like that. Like it creates this domain where water just hangs out. Water wants to be there because
Interesting.
of, yeah, it's the forces inside,
Yeah.
the ionotropic forces,
So that's
right? So
why
it's a
it's like a
hydrator.
plumper. It's a plumper, right? In your cosmetics. It is plumping. So is this molecule also plumping our fascia internally?
Absolutely. It's a plumper and it's a lubricant. It's
Uh-huh.
everything you want your face to have on it. When you're feeling dry, you're like, you're not reaching for the lotion or for the oil. You're kind of wanting something that doesn't clog, but that hydrates and brings the actual water without clogging. So it has this magical property, the balance of
Hmm.
these. And it's everywhere. It's everywhere in the body, it's everywhere in nature. So we have in the fascia now, if we zoom back out again, we have the collagens that everybody's been talking about forever, the proteinaceous collagenous matrix of protein that's really slow to turn over, which is why when we have scarring, right? Scars last a long time. And we really like our interest is in guiding the scarring process to be functional and using massage and using movement to help steer the way that collagen forms scars because it is so permanent once it lays itself down. But with hyaluronan, that has a really, really quick turnover. So hyaluronan is produced every day, all day long, by all of your mesenchymal cells. Now, meson meaning middle, and chyme is the word for soup. So
Hmm.
mesenchymal cells are like middle soup that secrete. They just spit out your fascia, your extracellular matrix. And
Oh, that's
that's
cool.
like the jungle gym, right? That all your cells live in. So far, so good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I feel like the reason that we're so interested in moisture in this
Mhm.
kind of connective tissue of the body is because in Ayurveda, we talk about drying out as we age. So you and I have always like connected around and talked a lot about movement, like yoga stuff. We both started when we were young, decades go by. So one of the things that I want to hear from you about is what does that look like? The drying out into that vata time of life and how that's affecting our tissue. And from a movement perspective, what's the best thing to do? I figure if anybody understands this, it's you. Like it's not a big fad, like, oh, we're going to lift heavy this year. And then next year they're going to tell us to go back to the treadmill. Right. So I think that's my interest in,
Legion
okay,
of
we're
sadness.
looking at moisture, like how do we maintain the moisture in the tissues where we want them, so that we're able to, like, I would say, stay mobile and stay limber and strong as we age, which are different things, I think, being strong and being limber, being stretchy, right? Those are different things. So I think that's like what I'd like to hear from you next.
Mm. I love that it's you posing these questions because I would see you as this like ultimate mover, the way that your career, your vocation as a mover has brought you through these different stages, and that we have roughly the same entry point in terms of Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga, which invites us to really push the compliance of our tissues, slinging a leg behind the head. And then the next movement are, as Matthew Remski famously has said, a torturous parade of arm balances, which requires like insane amounts of strength. So, yeah, the types of movement, these different flavors. And so going back to the previous point that we have in fascia, the protein matrix, and then we'll call it the plumping matrix, the gel. And it's because this gel is its molecular backbone is sugar. So you have proteins and then you have sugars. And the sugars, hyaluronan, it isn't the same as hyaluronic acid. In the body at physiological temperature, it's no longer has the properties of an acid. And so we'll refer to it in the body as hyaluronan or HA. And for your community here, for the listeners, there's a paper where Suzanne Scarlatta and we introduce the calcium hyaluronan axis. We call it CHA for short, cha cha cha. So CHA is this way, it's a perspective on cell signaling and the way the body uses hyaluronan as a signaling medium. And we can really start to see fascia not just as that collection of parts and not just as a lubricated collection of parts. It is tempting to kind of think that, like, okay, we've got hyaluronan, it makes tissues glide, it plumps things out, it holds space. It's a compressive medium. It takes the compression and resists that. So that must be how those parts are lubed so they can move. But what I really want our community to be clear on this in terms of movement, it isn't that you need to keep lubing the joint spaces and the fascial planes to keep them gliding. More lube is not better. And in fact, the more hyaluronan that piles up into these interstitial spaces within that interstitium that Neil Thies and colleagues have popularized and made now a household term, even with that New York Times article, is that we really need to see how important it is to clear, that the clearance of spent HA fragments is as important as squirting new HA into the spaces. Take a look at the show notes because we are going to put these references in the show notes.
If you're moving through perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause, you know this season of life can bring a lot of changes. One formula I've been loving is Menopause Balance from Banyan Botanicals. It's crafted with nourishing Ayurveda herbs to support a smooth, graceful, and empowering transition through menopause. Menopause Balance supports healthy female hormone and overall well-being, soothing occasional hot flashes, improving sleep quality, and rejuvenating the mind to support concentration. I appreciate Ayurveda's whole person approach, and I've seen this blend work for many women. It's designed to support body, mind, and heart during this natural transition, helping you feel more comfortable as your body moves through menopausal changes. If you're looking for gentle herbal support through perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause, give Menopause Balance from Banyan Botanicals a try. You can find it at banyanbotanicals.com/Kate, and I will include a link for you in the show notes. We spend so much time thinking about wellness, what we eat, how we sleep, how we manage stress, but oral health is an important part of this bigger picture. That's why I'm excited to share today's sponsor, Dr. Tongues. Dr. Tongues has been creating innovative natural oral care products for over 25 years, combining modern dental science with holistic wellness principles to support a healthier mouth and overall well-being. Their products are thoughtfully designed to work with your body, not against it. I love their incredibly popular Smart Floss, which is clinically shown to remove up to 55% more plaque than traditional flosses. I also love that Dr. Tongues focuses on sustainability, eco-conscious packaging, and avoiding unnecessary chemicals like PFAs, PTFE, dyes, and harsh additives whenever possible. If you're looking to upgrade your family's oral care routine with products that feel healthier and truly effective, visit drtongues.com. New customers get 15% off their purchase. So how do we end up with these fragments? It's like breaking down when we're doing exercise?
Exactly. So there's an enzyme that this gene and the enzyme go together, has two. It's a hyaluronic acid synthase 2. And you can think of it like a 3D printer just sitting on the cell membrane, just squirting out long, sinewy juice into the space. You just love this stuff. Put it all over your face, bathed in it everywhere. And your skin is actually the organ that contains the highest concentration of HA in the body, as well as the fluid of the eye and the ovaries. So ovaries are full of hyaluronan. So they're very fluidic, very mucousy. It's a kind of glycosaminoglycan that gives the body its juiciness. And hyaluronan specifically, right? It's this signaling medium that has these long chains. And to kind of go back to your question there, when it's extruded or synthesized into the extracellular space, they're long. And because they're super long, these Daltons in molecular length, they weigh more. So that's why they're called high molecular weight, HA. High molecular weight. And the signal that sends to our cells is quietude, maintenance, homeostasis, sattva. Everything is regulated here. We are middle balance. We are good. But over the course of the normal day, movement and our ancient evolutionary style of movement, which is continuous, intermittent, all day long, variable intensity, shear forces of that movement scissor up those chains. Shear force is essentially like scissoring. And our movement,
shears like scissors, shears. Yeah. I think what strikes me as so huge about this concept you're describing to us is that it basically points to the importance of balancing activity and rest, which is something that I talk about all the time.
It's unbelievably important. The variable intensity, because of the way that this system, the calcium hyaluronan axis, the way it is limited and regulated by ATP and the NAD plus system, these energy monitors. So these are the energy nutrient sensors within the cells that will help. The more mitochondria that you have, the more balanced that accountancy is of your energy levels. And it's different in the different fascial niches. Like a niche, keratinocytes, the research on skin cells, shows a different hyaluronan regulatory logic than the cardiac smooth muscle, for example. And it's in these two cell types, the skin cells and the heart and the blood vessel cells, where the research is the most robust on what causes these Has enzymes to produce the HA and send it into the cell spaces. And for skin, where we get the most insults from the sun, from the bee stings, from the scrapes and bruises, and every injury it bursts a cell, and ATP ends up leaking out into the extracellular space. And when the cells pick that up, they're like, oh shit, there's ATP in the extracellular space. That's not right. ATP should be intracellular. It should be inside. So damage, i.e. the ATP, it signals the cells to switch on the HA like a hose. It just sprays HA in the skin. And as ATP in its natural course of homeostasis, it breaks down and eventually turns into adenosine. Adenosine says, hold up, we're done. Turn off the hose. So it has this natural burst cycle where every time we get too much sun, scrape, injury, any of that, it turns on and off the HA. And bathing the skin in HA is the whole job of those fascial cells in that niche. Whereas in cardiac cells, the logic is different. In the myofascial cells, it's regulated differently as well, but with the same rheostat logic where it needs to turn off, on. But if we have unchecked HA production, we end up with an accumulation of it. And that's when it becomes pathological. So in the show notes, you'll see the papers by Rauhala in the skin cell population, and then by Vighetti in the blood vessel cell types. And then the paper that I've recently published in Frontiers in Physiology with my colleagues, Suzanne Scarlatta, and also Dr. Robert Schleip, who, if we're really going to talk about, celebrities and fascia experts, he's pretty much up there. So the takeaway there, like for lived experience, is keep moving to clear that HA. And as you move, those fragmented HA chains are cleared through the interstitium and then processed and excreted by the body. If you don't clear them out, they accumulate and we get gunged up, sticky, painful movement.
Right, right. Okay, which a lot of people I think are feeling that. Yeah. So let's say I'm just going to give an example here. Let's say I'm lifting heavy, or I'm doing like high intensity training. So that's creating the damage on purpose, right? Which is signaling the body to kind of create this juicy stuff. And that's all as it should be. But the damage has also kind of sheared some of those long molecules, and they're now kind of moving in the system and need to be moved out of the system. So you're saying on the off day, right? So like I wouldn't want to do, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I wouldn't want to train hard every day. I'd want like an in-between day where I'm not just lying there, I'm doing something that's going to, I'm guessing you're going to say through kind of movement of the lymph is going to allow the body to kind of get these sheared molecules out of the system. And that part of the problem maybe is that we're not getting that proper kind of recovery time in order to support the damage, that we're doing on the other side. Because I think culturally we're like, nobody ever gave you like a medal that you hang on your chest for resting. The medal was always for your training, right? So is that right? And would you say it is kind of like we want like a gentle movement, or do you have any specific things that you would practice on the off days of high intensity exercise to move these molecules out of the system?
Oh, you've got a real intuition for this stuff, Kate. I love it. You've just nicely summed all that up. And I think what you're saying is really important as well as we integrate the high intensity interval training, or the HIIT and the heavier lifting. Adding load is so important because there are two mechanisms at work here broadly where you apply that hormesis, the hormetic stress to the cells, where they are then stimulated to get stronger, right? And to grow more mitochondria. And the more mitochondria that we have, that will upregulate NAD, NAD being the currency, the energetic currency. And when that NAD is in balance with the energy sensors that regulate hyaluronan production, right, then we get just enough increase in the HA production in the system. And while that off day is letting you move and glide and gently encourage zhuzh, those intercellular spaces and the fascial planes to ease the fragmented, which is pro-inflammatory, the HA fragments that are spent from yesterday's training, they sit stagnating in these spaces and they are pro-inflammatory. They're DAMPs, damage associated molecular patterns, DAMP. And they tell the system there's damage, there's inflammation, send this storm of inflammation like to my cells to repair them, which is what you want. We want that hormetic stress. We've just done the workout so that we would have the result. We would have the increase in mitochondria, the increase in the lean muscle mass, the pulling on the bones that tells the bones to get denser and stronger, and the blood to become more robust. All of those, the mood benefits, the regulation of the reproductive cycle, even in the autumn and winter stages, there's that neuroendocrine cascade that is shown to affect the whole system. And that is part of the regulatory logic. But if we don't, like you say, become champion recovery artists, then we're not going to make the best use of all our efforts doing hard stuff in the gym. So you're absolutely right there. The off days, not lying in bed, you're not ill, but you do have stagnant HA just hanging around in the tissues. And so things like gentle movement, zone 2, which is very popular right now, everyone, wanting to sit in zone 2 for a long time. All of that gliding movements, rotation. And this is my special area of interest in terms of movement now, is really how we can harness that rotational biomechanical patterns that will help, like just, as simply as the visual here is wringing a dish towel. What do? You twist it.
Twist.
You give it a squeeze. So these kind of movements, as well as your hydration, which is pretty common knowledge now as well. But the movement is where it's at for draining off that fragmented HA.
Right. So like walk, dance party. Also, I mean, I'm thinking about like the ton of twisting movements that you're doing when you're like gardening or yeah, just kind of like bending over to get that thing underneath the bed. Right? Kind of like day-to-day movements. There is a lot of potential recovery. Like, should I clean? Is it a good day to vacuum on the off day?
Oh, absolutely. Especially for two mature Ashtanga practitioners who I don't know. At my heyday, I was like 2 or 3 hours practicing in the morning. You too.
Yeah.
To have that amount of dedicated time is a distant memory for me now with my life as it is, responsible for others now. So I don't as often get that kind of structured time, although I do still feel it is personal hygiene. You're getting that physical time to do the weight training, the cold exposure, the dealing with the hard things for that hormesis is so important. It's like brushing my teeth. I do still make time for it, but there isn't the same, it's not a guarantee you get 2 or 3 hours a day. So
No, maybe you get 20 or 30 minutes. That's a little more like
yeah.
it.
And it's a mindset shift really to think what can I do now? And this is where Vilpa comes in. And that's Emmanuel Stamatakis. I'll get the pronunciation wrong, but his team at the University of Sydney. The Vilpa is this vigorous, variable intensity lifestyle, physical activity. And I think that's so important, especially the variability of it. But that it's not about duration. It is about intensity. It is about how can I run up these stairs I'm cycling, I'll just sprint to that stop sign. And that's also the mindset, not just for the intensity, but also for the clearance of HA, that it doesn't actually have to be a sprint effort to the stop sign. It can be, I'm going to bust out a handstand here with my daughter in the grass, or
Right.
we're going to twist, or we're gardening now, like you're mentioning. It's those movements that invite us to, oh, there's a gate here. I can rest my hand on it and lean into that sensation and find those snacks, those little movement snacks that will allow the body to naturally do its thing to clear. And that
That
is
is
our
so
evolutionary.
different. It's
Yeah,
so different.
that's
It's so different than everybody puts exercise in the exercise box and is like, what should I be doing for my 45 minutes of exercise? Whereas I like your movement snacks is more like, if you're bringing the groceries inside anyway, why not just like run from the garage to the house with the bags, right? Or lift the bags
yeah,
up over your head, right? Just like kind of
yeah,
spontaneous but vigorous short bursts of movement. Is that right?
absolutely. That's the VILPA. That's kind of your standards, variable and vigorous intensity. But what I'm saying is like sometimes, and if you're a mom out there or anyone with a lot on your plate, someone you're caring for, or where you cannot face another demand, and having to
Yeah.
sprint to a stop sign is just enough to like put you into some severe stress,
Right.
then, don't do it. But lean into a physical movement that can feel good. And just because
Yep.
it's not part of your yoga class, it's not your candle lit yin. It's not it's not the thing that you can do for an hour, but it is that one little movement. You can put your
Yep.
hands in prayer behind your back or fold in half and ragdoll it out for while someone's cleaning your windows at the fuel station. Something you can do in those pockets of space to help clear the fragmented HA.
Okay, so that's like we're doing something high intensity, what, a couple times a week, and then on the off days we're just kind of trying to find those snacks throughout the day. And that is that enough? Is that good?
I suppose it depends on your goal, doesn't it? Are you trying to be a Masters champion gravel biker, or are you just trying to feel good in your body and toilet independently when you're 80?
Yeah, yeah. I think the second one,
Mhm.
yeah, the like maintain. I think a lot of us are thinking about longevity and maintaining mobility as we age. And I think also a lot of us are thinking about hormonal changes and does that change, like, does perimenopause and menopause time of life change any of what you've said so far? Or does that all just remain true? That this kind of training and rest with movement snacks is the ideal way to support the body?
We talked a little bit about peptides and about these exogenous from outside the body means of regulation. And I think you and I have both been really interested in what we can do from the inside out, from our behaviors and our lifestyle choices. I mean, you are kind of the queen of that, really, with Ayurvedic lifestyle and bringing it into your kitchen and into your
Hmm.
body. But I do think that as we start to reach milestones of 40 and 50 and beyond, there's the HRT, there's the hormone replacement, there are people using GLPs.
Yep.
That is not my area of expertise. But I think what we do have to acknowledge is that hormonal cliff is there. And there's some good science showing that for many women, HRT can really help prolong that cliff and make it less steep and more gradual. But regardless of that, we are looking at losing a major part of our tissue sustaining pathway. And that estrogen and the progesterone, that cyclical hormonal tissue maintenance strategy that's been with us for decades that we're used to having is now falling away, like erosion. And as we lose our lean muscle mass and the mitochondria that go with it, we are also losing the powerhouses of energy in the body. So I think it becomes more important as we age, even when our energy is lessening, because we're losing the lean muscle mass and the mitochondria, is to shore that up with more dedicated training sessions. if possible, more of the heavy lifting. And this is a really important caveat with those recovery days, with the gliding, with allowing yourself the time to clear the fragmented HA. And we won't have the time or scope to get into the deeper science on this, but it is in these papers that are in the show notes about the energetic regulatory architecture of how HA is synthesized and limited by the amount of available energy in the cell, and that your tissues won't let you produce more HA. And those, remember, new HA, the long sinewy chains, are their signal to the body is we're regulated, we're quiet, we're ready to go, it's all good. What you have then in the tissues at that stage is the fragmented low molecular weight HA, and that's the drying. Because we have lower mitochondria, lower energy, that puts the brakes on the production of HA because it is such an energetically expensive process for the tissues. They will shut that down when there isn't enough energy to produce new HA. They will shut it down. So you dry out. And that links back to our interest in staying juicy, staying lubricated. And lubricated is a misnomer because, we've inherited this terminology from the steam engine, the era of the train, about lubricated metal parts moving nicely. But it's about hydration, the buffering between these planes, them having enough water to ease. So those surfaces ease past one another rather than getting gunged up and stuck. And when they do get stuck, as we may have experienced that as we age, it becomes more important to exercise vigorously to keep the mitochondria biogenesis turning over. So our cells are getting the message, hey, I've got enough energy. My mitochondria are all online, and that means I have enough energy. And the Has enzymes are synthesizing AHA to keep it turning over. So it becomes even more important as we age when we don't feel like it. We got to go out and lift.
Yeah, move, right. And like do the high intensity stuff. Yeah, to keep the body producing those mitochondria. And I am also hearing something in this glide about the importance of variety and full range movement.
Oh, variety is everything. It's, the science there on longevity. I don't know how much of your community kind of overlaps with the longevity, like the biohackers and extending one's, not necessarily the lifespan, but the health span, the time when you're alive and actually enjoying it and your family doesn't have to take over your care. It's a hard one because, they're not the same thing. I don't know anyone who'd be interested in extending their years on this planet if the last 10 of them are bedbound.
Right. That is a conversation unto itself, for sure.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's a health span thing. And that variety, I do feel, is key to the mental. The integration of the left and the right sides of the brain through the corpus callosum, through the right and the left side, that bilateral cross-body movement, the complex lifting, as well as that maneuvering up and down off the floor, rotating up, rotating back down again. Figuring out new movements is very important for that mind-body connection to stave off the onset of Alzheimer's and dementia. And so it's big, the variety, not just for the tissue quality, but that the mental, to keep that brain online. Yeah.
Right. And kind of like talking to the tissues, right? Like the neurology, keeping all of that, connected. I haven't really thought about it like that, but I do know that in the past 10 years, I've been gravitating towards everything. Like just ride your bike, paddleboard, swim, dance, go to a dance class, go to Pilates, go to, this kind of yoga, that kind of yoga. It's like the more, the merrier, right? The more ways that we're moving and the more it sounds like you're also pointing towards like doing new things. Moving the body in new ways is probably huge for keeping that neuroplasticity happening.
Dr. Kelly Starrett, who wrote the Becoming the Supple Leopard, big advocate of the CrossFit scene, just has this extremely likable way about him and the way that he weaves that together. And he works with his wife and really just walking the talk and living it. But he talks a lot about pain being a request for change. Pain is your body
Mm.
saying, do it differently. And I
Oh,
think
that's a good
that's what you're
point.
saying that, yeah, go do something else, do it differently, vary the vectors of stress. 'Cause everything that we do imposes stress on the body, and it's how we curate that stress to make it stress. That when you add the EU onto stress, it's like euphoria. Stress, meaning the positive domain of stress that will result in an outcome that is you're stronger, you're smarter, you're more intentional, these results. These are the outcomes we're
Hmm.
after.
Hmm. So, Karen, if a person was, let's what we're calling high cortisol, right? A person's like been in a long-term stressed out situation. They've got high cortisol. They're inflamed. They're not sleeping well. They're tired. All the things. I'm going to guess you're going to say they should still follow the protocol here and still do high intensity exercise with the resting. They're not resting, they're recovering.
This is big. I think we're speaking so much of the same language, and it's lovely to see that aligned interest. But cortisol is something you want it to be high in the morning. You want to
Right.
wake up with that circadian aligned burst of cortisol, and we want it to be aligned with our dopamine and our motivation. We want to be set up with these achievable goals. And then we want to have the come down in the evening for the best possible sleep architecture. We're getting the deep sleep, we're getting the REM sleep. And where we're not lined up with the circadian rhythm, the biology is off, and we've got somebody who is depleted their cortisol, meaning they don't have any.
Oh boy.
They've spent it all. Yeah, they've spent it all.
Hmm.
Can't get it back.
Hmm.
So for that situation, you go to an endocrinologist, you go to a functional medicine practitioner, and we look at our rhythms, our daily rhythms, and how do we get back to bursting? Because these are pulsatile rhythms. It needs to burst and then it needs to go away for the rest of the day. And how do we get it back to bursting? So for everyone, finding and prioritizing rest. I have a student who was talking to me about resting is important for ourselves, but she asked me, do you model rest? Because we always talk about parenting. And I realized, I just don't do that. And I think modeling rest for our people, for our community, for our children, and the value. And I love the visual there. You've got a medal around your neck for the best rester.
Best resting. Yeah.
Best
Yeah.
resting. And that's the person who's living in that hyper stress state. You must operationalize the luteal phase, the back end of the day, where you have burst, you have proliferated the early part of the day, and then in the afternoon, ease off, turn the lights off. If you need to
Hmm.
the light on, make it red, go to bed.
Right.
You're with,
Right.
you're with me on this.
Oh, totally. I mean, the common thread here is dinacharya, is like the daily rhythm,
Mm.
or even with the exercise and recovery is also in this rhythm. And so you've kind of described for us today, like how the body on a molecular level has its own system of checks and balances. And it's sort of like the science behind the rhythm, what's happening in there. And that potentially so many of the things that make us sick are a lack of rhythm, a lack of balance between the doing and the not doing, or the working hard and the recovering.
That's it. I think you've brought that like really nicely full circle.
Yeah, and another thing I heard you say that I just want to repeat, you were talking about synthesis creeping up while clearance of the waste is creeping down. That's what happens when we don't have the proper recovery, which my takeaway, Karen, from this conversation with you is going to really revolutionize what I'm doing on the off days for sure. That I'm going to be thinking about variable, full range, kind of spontaneous movement. Because I think what I used to think was that, like how we did it in the yoga world, was you like bust your butt and then you rest and you just like take a bath, or yeah, don't do anything, and it was
Castor
these
oil.
yeah, exactly. It's like these two extremes, but what I've been noticing in my body that's kind of given me pause is that doesn't work anymore. Like I have to move every day. And so the way you've described it molecularly makes total sense to me. Of course, I need to move every day or else I'm going to get this backup of all this stuff that's going to get kind of sticky, which sounds like ama to me, what we call ama
Mm,
in Ayurveda,
mm.
right? That like undigested material that's like hanging around. So you're describing like this way to, and I think your movement, if I may call it a movement system, I know that you have kind of created these dynamic, I don't know if they're even sequences. It's more like you're teaching these different rotational patterns for people to explore. Is that what you would say?
I would say that. I think that fairly sums it up.
Yeah, the
The
five
idea is
filaments.
five filaments. It's a rubric for looking at rotational biomechanics. It's not anything I've made up, really. The rubric itself just draws on classical biomechanics, such as supination and pronation, the turning of the palms up, turning them down,
Yeah.
and then getting really, really granular about all the things we can do with that pattern, how we can supinate and pronate, how that feeds up into the shoulder with external and internal rotation. And as we make the movements more complex with greater range of motion, how that involves easing the tissues further into rotation as we flex further. For example, the scapulohumeral rhythm, when the shoulder flexes as the humerus goes towards the ear, there is an associated external rotation that goes along with that can't be avoided. It's just baked into our morphology, the shape of
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the easiest ways, if you're in a place to move wherever you're listening, is if you take your arms behind your back and you try and you really try to get your hands together, just with your palms facing forward. Like there is nobody I know, and I know a lot of really flexible people. There is no person who's going to get their hands together. But all you have to
Right.
do is to pronate, internally rotate, take the hands back, and then there's a pretty good chance that you might
That
be
you
able to
can,
get your hand.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by heuristic or heuristic. It's a concept that is made very simple by doing it, by a physical experience where
Yeah.
you can feel that's true. There's like, that's pretty straightforward and common sense.
Right.
And with the five filaments, the repertoire is 150 little movement snacks that range from as simple as turning the palms up to supinate and pronate, and then moving into figure of eight patterns, then leveraging the wall and the floor, like you do in lizard pose, for example, with the edge of your foot on against the floor. So using those walls to add load, and then as we start to clear those patterns and focus on wringing that fascial dish towel to ease out and focus on the clearance, then we might start adding like proper load, things like
Mm.
heavy cork blocks, kettlebells, even. I've been working a
Mm.
lot with kettlebells and
Yeah.
dynamic, yeah, spiral swinging and looking at plyometrics, which is maybe something you've worked with in your practice. So I think
Maybe
you'd
I
love
did, but
it.
didn't call it that. No idea.
It's jumping, jump training. And
Oh,
I
I
know
just
you will
started
have
jumping
done
rope. I just started jumping rope, Karen. Yes, because I've
oh,
heard you talk about the importance of jumping. Yes.
jumping. And this
Which,
is from Sarah Hatcher, my dear friend and yoga teacher of many years, and and her teachers as well. But the importance of jumping while you still can. Jump
yeah,
until parts start falling off of you.
right.
It
Because
you really that
that
ground
makes the
break.
mitochondria, right? That just like tells them like, hey, buddy, let's get moving. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The
Those
jump
force.
rope, you get a lot of bang for your buck, right? I'm sweating. I'm like so over. It's 20 seconds. So I've been doing that, just part of my high intensity days, which are Not often, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. But if we wanted to access your method, learn more about it, where would we go?
Spiralsyllabus.com. I was hoping maybe we'd include a link there in the show notes as well.
Let's do it. Spiralsyllabus.com. I believe you're on Instagram as well.
Yes, and you can find me either Spiral Syllabus or Karen Kirkness on
Great.
Instagram.
And we'll put both of those in the show notes for sure. So I'm going to give us a quick review here. The big take homes, right, that you've explained for us, like sort of on a molecular level, is the importance of variety in our movement, the importance of working the body in its full range, which is going to be different for everybody, what that is, and also the importance of recovery while paying attention to circulation and lymphatic flow on the recovery days. Yeah. Active recovery. This answers so many of my questions. And I think a lot of us, this is an Ayurveda podcast, but yes, many of us grew up with Western science as the approved modality for understanding and believing. So a lot of folks still are going to be more compelled to actually follow the protocol because of the way that you explained it. So I appreciate that and your time in all these years of going past the experience with the body with just like a deep sense of curiosity, that you're going all the way back to the embryo, right? And unpacking that and explaining that to normal people, which is amazing. And I think you're also kind of like heavy hitting in the academic community that many of us don't have access to. So I appreciate that you're straddling those worlds and sharing your work with us here.
Oh, that means the world to me, Kate. It's just my pleasure to get to riff with you. I think being in the academic world, everything has to be so meticulously referenced, and it's, hours of miserable computer time. But this is the kind of computer time which is joyful and spontaneous, and where we can both draw on our, many decades of friendship and experiences and see that we are sharing that common ground. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for being here. We'll have to have you back in the future. We'll see if folks have questions. So those of you listening, if you have questions for us to talk more about, send us an email, hello@ayurvedicliving.institute, or you can also just leave a comment on your podcast platform for me. Thanks for being here. One more thing before you go. If you've ever dreamed of studying Ayurveda at the source, join me in India next February for a 10-day culinary and nutrition immersion 2027. We'll cook, we'll study, and we'll explore Mysore together, and you'll come home with the confidence to make food medicine. Learn more and enroll at ayurvedicliving.institute. I would love to have you with us.